up next.
Everything is burning. There are fires, little clouds of smoke.
From the mean streets of LA in the 60s to the corridors of power in Washington today, scholar Michael Frazier on the changes in Black America. If every country has its own narrative, a story that helps define its identity, then the U.S. is largely defined by its founding call to liberty and by the question of race, specifically relations between whites and blacks. And while much has been made of President Bush's frequent call for freedom around the globe, considerably less attention has been paid to the state of race relations under his watch. Michael Frazier is a professor of political science at Howard University in Washington, D.C. He's in the province of Ontario for a series of lectures sponsored by the U.S. State Department in support of Black History Month. And we welcome you to Studio 2 and to Canada.
Thank you so very much.
Good to have you up here.
Appreciate it.
In the last election, let's start there.
Sure.
88% of the African-American community in the United States voted for John Kerry. It's the largest single demographic, if you like, that supports the Democratic Party. Why do African-Americans so overwhelmingly support the Democrats?
Well, historically, African Americans have supported the Democratic Party ever since Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the president because of his attitude and social policies he had for African American people. It's also due to the fact that black leadership have traditionally been inside the camp of the Democratic Party.
What happened to the party of Lincoln? I thought blacks loved the Republicans for such a long time.
Well, they did, but things changed, particularly when it came to the whole question of how the country was going to survive its second traumatic experience, which is the Great Depression. And the president then, Herbert Hoover, who was a Republican, said allow business to be business, and therefore that the government felt no social responsibility for its citizenry.
So that may have started it. In which case, do you think the Democratic Party takes the African-American vote for granted, given that it's so overwhelmingly for the Democrats?
Absolutely.
It does?
Absolutely.
So then should more African-Americans be voting Republican?
Well, you would think that would be the case, but the Republican Party, for whatever reason, has decided not to make certain kinds of appeals to the black constituencies in the United States. Approximately 12% of the American population are African Americans. In whole numbers, that's about 36 million people.
It's a lot of people.
A lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And what I see is the Republican Party deciding they can't give the Democrats a 10% spot. And so their efforts to break into that particular numerical population.
If you look at it, I mean, history has been made by this president in as much as 2 consecutive secretaries of state, both African Americans, Colin
Right.
Powell, Condoleezza Rice. And one would suspect that there would be tremendous pride in the black community across the United States over those achievements. Is there?
Yes and no. And let me explain
Sure.
the yes and then the no. Yes in the sense that Condoleezza Rice, or Dr. Rice, if you will, she has achieved something that has not ever happened, an African-American woman being in the position that she is as Secretary of State. For that, there's enormous pride, because she, again, has become a first. Colin Powell was a first, but both of these individuals have always been a first in pretty much throughout their careers. So in that sense, there's pride. In the opposite sense, the secretary represents public policies that are endorsed, obviously, by her boss, which aren't necessarily popular positions when it comes to African American people. And therefore, it's a mixed emotion. I remember a few years ago when there was this huge discussion about the merits of Mr. Clarence Thomas becoming a Supreme Court justice, and there was vehement opposition by African Americans for that appointment. You don't hear that kind of noise in this regard.
Why is that?
She has put in the time in what we refer to on the cross. She has worked from the bottom up, growing up in segregated Birmingham, electing to study and master a subject that is very unique for African Americans in general.
One more follow-up on Condi Rice, and that is Dick Morris, who was Bill Clinton's behind-the-scenes spin meister, I guess, for many years, suggested in a column, I think last week, that he thought Condi Rice people should start to put her name out there as a potential replacement for Mr. Bush, that she would be a great Republican presidential nominee for '08. And I'm wondering what would be more important to African-American voters in the United States. The fact that here is a chance to have a high-profile African-American at the top of the ticket, or the fact that she's supported so many policies that African-Americans don't support.
Well, first of all, Dick Morris might say anything. He is a spin master, and no one really knows where his loyalties are because he changes like the weather. He changes like you change your clothes. But as far as Condi Rice being at the top of the ticket, I do not believe that the base that the president has established over a period of time, which he inherited from his father, would necessarily support Condi Rice as potential presidential candidate.
Okay, that's the conservative base you're talking about.
That's
now.
right.
I mean the African-American base.
I'm going there.
Okay.
I'm going there. You get support by providing services and having a relationship with people. I see Condi Rice as a person who, if she chose to do such, would have to work on that relationship.
Does she not have a relationship with the African-American community in the States?
Well, she has a relationship in the sense that she is who she is and her ethnicity is what it is, but you have a relationship by working with and not just making speeches in behalf of. In order to get the people's support and have all the P's at the various levels of the economic strata, there has to be some evidence, some demonstrated evidence that you are worthy of one's support.
So I get the sense that you don't feel she's championed the issues that are of major importance to the African-American community enough. Is that right?
Well, I think she's championed the issues that are important to her and the things that she believes in. Now, because the African-American community is so diverse, some would argue that she's championed these issues because she's championed issues for America. And therefore, by extension, she's championing African-American sentiment, vote, and support.
I don't sense you're saying that, though.
No, I am not saying that.
Yeah.
I am not saying that.
Okay. Last couple of minutes here. Let's talk about whether the glass is half full or half empty. Race relations in the United States is a perpetual issue, has been for 400 years down there.
Well,
where are things at now?
Well, I think the glass is still half full, not half empty.
What's the difference?
Well, the best way to put it is the way the black preachers would put it. Things aren't the way they could be or should be, but thank God they're not like they used to be. And therefore, there's hope. And see, for an oppressed people everywhere, there has to be some symbols of hope. Condi Rice, Colin Powell, and others represent symbols of hope. Symbols of the possibilities, symbols that one can strive, and if they're lucky and have the support they need to have, that they too can rise.
Are blacks still an oppressed people in the United States, Michael?
Absolutely.
They are.
Absolutely.
I look at a gentleman here who teaches at a major university in the capital city of the most important country in the world.
Right.
I don't see an oppressed person in front of me.
Well, that's because you're not trying to catch a cab.
Okay. You've had this experience in Washington.
Oh, absolutely. Trying to catch a cab at the train station. And particularly if the sun is going down and I don't have my tie because I've either been to the athletic club or some other establishment. And so if you don't have a certain look, but that doesn't mean just at that location, throughout the Washington metropolitan area, which has a majority African-American population.
So the little things in life that others take for granted, you feel are still denied to the general African-American population in the States?
Absolutely. Give you a quick example.
Yeah.
If you ask the average African-American male, when you go to school, who do you study? You study about important white people. I had a class, I asked my white students, can you name 5 African-American important people, excluding Martin King, Condi Rice, and Colin Powell? They can't get past 4. Because their experiences are such that the relationship has not permeated to the extent that blacks are perceived as being consequential.
Give us some advice here, because in this province, 10 years ago, a royal commission recommended, and the call for it has gone out again last week, that in some black communities in this city, the students are having a tough time. And one of the recommendations was black-only schools. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I think it's a bad idea from my point of view, but I would not be as arrogant or presumptuous to say I know what the black community in Canada
I understand,
needs.
but what don't you like about the idea?
Well, because what it does is, the world is a village. It truly is. And I traveled to China last year, and I recognized how small this village is really becoming. And one has to be effective in life, which means you have to learn about all aspects of life. Now, in respect to all black curriculums or all black anything, I think the existing curriculums have to ensure that white children as well as black children are aware of each other's differences, because the only time they come in contact is in conflict or, quote unquote, the unifying force of ball. Basketball, football, baseball, golf. That's a unifying force. But you don't know about people. If you don't interface with them, there's no opportunity to get to know the other person. And so what we do on both sides of the divide, we stereotype about each other. And if a person look like you, he got to be just like you. And so if there's no social intercourse in the sense of people having a chance to meet and greet and know each other, then you live with suspicion. And you retain the prejudices that you've inherited, because we believe what we've been taught. And often we learn what we're taught is non-productive information and language. So the cup is half full.
But that cup, which is half full, is the water filling up? I want to extend your metaphor. In other words, are things getting better or are they getting worse?
It depends upon where you live, the opportunities or lack thereof. So if you ask 5 different black people, are things getting better or things getting worse? It depends on where they're standing at that moment on the globe.
I'm going to get 5 different answers.
That's right. Now, if you ask me, are things getting better for me? Absolutely. I'm here in Canada talking to you. That's an impossibility.
We're very glad about that, incidentally.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I appreciate your commentary.
Michael Frazier from Howard University in Washington, D.C. Thanks so much for being with us today on Studio 2.
All right.
Thank you. This is a lot of fun.